Here we are in New Amsterdam, one of Harrison County's small river towns. This was a booming site during the 1800s because of all the river traffic and the shipping things that happened. Matter of fact, the census shows that in 1890 there were 395 people, 1900 there were 393. So close to 400 people lived in, were residents in New Amsterdam. This was a place where there was lots of farming. Indiana's largest fruit farm was held here, although of course they've all gone bankrupt now. The river traffic has died up and the little town is pretty much deserted. As you can see, I'm standing in front of the general store. The Ohio River is right behind me. New Amsterdam was a booming town, and I'm going to read you a little segment that I hope will capture the flavor of how times were during the busy times in New Amsterdam. Because the Ohio cliffs on the Indiana-Kentucky shores were incredibly steep, a chute was constructed to convey harvested logs from the edge of the woods into the waiting Ohio River barge some 200 to 400 feet away. Near the bottom end of the chute, there was a raised place to serve as a brake to slow down the speed of the moving log. These ties traveled down the hill at a rate of about 1 per minute. 2 men waited at the bottom of the chute on opposite sides with pickaxes to stick and swing each tie onto the barge, where another pair of men quickly stored them in layers on the barge. One tie followed another, on and on, like clockwork. Now we've left New Amsterdam and we're traveling on River Road, and we find this unusual formation. And here's what the WPA, the Works Progress Administration, had to say about this formation, the teapot. Nature is always finding ways and producing some of the most interesting sights. One of these unusual carvings is a huge rock about 1 mile south of New Amsterdam. This giant pot stands off from the road near the cliff. Here's a quote describing early New Amsterdam. The town was a thriving, bustling river port, and it was especially exciting on Saturdays when farmers brought their grain and livestock to be loaded on packet boats. It was just like the fair. As you can see, we're at the site of one of the many Mulzer's quarries. This Mulzer's quarry happens to be located at the site of the ancient town, Northampton, which stood between Mockport and New Amsterdam on River Road. We're on the site of the long gone Northampton. Northampton was founded in 1815. It was gone within about 15 years. It was small but infamous. It was filled with gambling, drinking, and violence. I'm going to give you an early description of Northampton from a letter written by Evelyn Leonard, who later married John H. Farnsley. Early description of Northampton. Could I speak its much praise of the inhabitants of this country as of the inanimate object, I should be perfectly content with our new situation. But society, generally speaking, is composed of an indolent, intemperate, uncouth people. The tillage of the land is performed with so much facility that they are confident they can obtain a subsistence without exertion, and with this they are content. They are satisfied to dwell in habitations inferior to most of the New England barns, as they are not compelled by the inclemency of the weather to provide better ones. Fred Griffin, local historian, summed it all up with this quote: "It is thought that the town was so wicked it did away with itself. People would go down there with their belongings, maybe to get to New Orleans, and they'd get no further. They'd disappear." Here we are at the site of Titus, another small Harrison County, Ohio river town. It is located at the intersection of River Road and Wesley Chapel Road. Titus's claim to fame is that in 1902, the Eureka Telephone Company was founded in Titus with a capital stock of $10,000. However, when it came time for the directors of Eureka Telephone Company to meet, no building in Titus was large enough to house that event, so it was moved to the Mockport Presbyterian Church. Titus did have a post office for several years. It was discontinued in 1905 when the mailboats stopped service. Haunted Hollow. This is from a WPA account. Although Haunted Hollow is not the name of a town, it is the name of a hollow which empties into the Ohio River and is supposed to be haunted. Here's the Haunted Hollow ghost story. Between Lopp's Landing and Mockport long ago, a cabin was built by a boatman who landed his boat on shore, constructed a shack, and operated a business. Some of the stories say he operated a lime kiln, while others say he was a bark peeler for use in tanning hides. However he made his living, he made preparations to head downriver with his cargo to sell. The legend continues that he never completed his trip because he was robbed and gruesomely murdered. Allegedly, the thieves cut off his head and threw his torso into the Ohio River. Local reports have been given that at various times since then, a headless man has been seen in the vicinity. Even today, Haunted Hollow is an isolated location, and travelers may find themselves hastening through this section, even if they don't see a headless apparition. Mockport is another one of our river towns. It was incorporated in 1881. Fruit was big business here. Distilleries were big business here. Mussling, fishing. Many of the men from Mockport also worked on the river. As a matter of fact, it's said that more men from Mockport worked on the river than any other town between all the way up to Pittsburgh. Worked up on the river. I'm standing by the town well, and the town well was reportedly dug by an Indian. There's a legend that says once you drink from this water, water from this well, then you'll always come back to Mockport. But after the 1937 flood, the most devastating flood that hit here, many of the people didn't come back. And here we are at the Ohio River, just below Mockport. And during the time that this was a riverboat town, some of the boats that stopped here during boom times included Gray Eagle, Rainbow, Fashion, Tarascon, Morning Star, Golden Rule, Cotton Blossom, and many others, including many named after states and cities. Mockport was connected to Corydon by a regular bus route, and irregular ferry operations were offered on this site until the 1960s, when everything changed. The 1960s saw the long-awaited completion of the Matthew E. Welsh Memorial Bridge, linking Kentucky with Indiana. That's the bridge you see behind me. The bridge opened to traffic on November 19, 1966 as a toll bridge, but it is toll-free in 2020.